You are standing at the edge of a Friday that is not ordinary, because something old is being left behind and something clean is beginning to breathe in your life. This is not the kind of beginning that makes noise first and meaning later. This is the kind that arrives quietly and then changes the whole room, the whole pace, the whole way you answer what used to frighten you. I need you to stay with this, because the promise wrapped inside this day is not small, and the way it reaches you may be gentler than you expected. You have felt the weight of waiting in your body before you had words for it. You know that feeling in the chest when the day looks normal, but the inside of you does not. The pull in the shoulders when you carry a burden nobody can see. The tiredness that settles into your hands after you have tried to be strong too long. You may have sat in a room full of light and still felt like something in you was still asking for dawn. You may have opened your phone, checked your messages, looked at the clock, and felt the strange ache of wanting this season to move, but not knowing how to move it. That is why this message is not arriving too early or too late. It is coming to meet the place where your strength has been quietly spent. What is happening with you is not random, and this Friday is not just a date passing by on a calendar. It is being revealed as a threshold, a moment where God is inviting you out of repetition and into renewal, out of confusion and into clarity, out of delay and into a cleaner kind of trust. By the end of this message, you will recognize the difference between what has been draining you and what has been preparing you. You will see why the resistance has felt so personal, why the silence has not been empty, and why the next step does not need to be dramatic to be real. You will also notice that the beginning God promised often looks smaller than the ending your fear imagined, and yet it carries more authority than the old cycle ever did. Think about a normal morning, the kind that seems too ordinary to hold anything sacred. The cup is still warm in your hands, the room is half awake, the sunlight lands on a chair or a table or the edge of a curtain, and inside that ordinary scene there is a attention. You need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuzazara readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment. Sure, you cannot explain. You may be getting dressed, washing dishes, starting the car, or standing under the shower when the thought comes again that life should not feel so stalled. Yet even in that simple routine, God can place a quiet beginning where you least expect it, because the new start does not always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it comes as a steadiness, a clearer breath, a calmer decision, a refusal to keep feeding what has already exhausted you. And when that happens, the ordinary room becomes the first witness of something holy. You are not being singled out because you are better than others, but because you have become more sensitive to what does not fit anymore. That sensitivity is not weakness, it is discernment forming inside you. There are people who can stay in noise and call it peace, and there are people who can sit in silence and feel the whole room telling the truth. You have become the second kind, and that has made your life feel heavier at times, because you notice what others overlook. You notice the mismatch between the words and the atmosphere, the gap between what is promised and what is actually lived, the cost of pretending. That difference is not a flaw in you. It is often how God prepares someone to recognize a turning point before it becomes visible to everyone else. And because you can sense more, the opposition has often come through ordinary pressure instead of obvious disaster. It shows up as distraction, as a dozen small demands, as the urge to postpone what your spirit already knows, as the conversations that leave you more tired than before. It can even hide inside your own habits, telling you to wait one more day, answer one more message, carry one more burden, explain one more time. The enemy of your clarity rarely begins by attacking your faith directly. It usually begins by draining your focus. That is why this moment matters so much. If your attention stays scattered, you will keep calling delay by a softer name, and the new beginning will feel farther away than it really is. There is a scriptural echo here that speaks with quiet force, the kind of echo that does not shout, but still steadies the soul. Think of the moments when God told someone to step forward before the full road could be seen, when obedience had to come before certainty, when the sea did not part until the foot moved. Your life may not look like that story on the surface, but the inner shape is familiar. A call, a pause, a trust, and then a path appearing under the feet that had decided not to stay stuck. That is why the promise attached to this Friday is not merely comfort, it is movement, direction, and the return of a confidence you forgot you had. If you keep pretending nothing is shifting, the cycle will keep teaching you its old lesson. You will keep waking up with the same low hum of unrest, the same urge to survive the day rather than inhabit it, the same hidden fatigue that makes even simple choices feel heavy. What you ignore does not disappear. It settles deeper. It hardens sensitivity, clouds the heart, and turns what should have been a doorway into another room of delay. I'm telling you this soberly, because the cost of silence is real, and because God is not asking you to dramatize the moment, only to recognize it before it passes. If even one of those signs has landed in you, if your shoulders dropped at any point while you were listening, type 888 in the comments. Let that be your quiet agreement that what is arriving is not chaos, but confirmation. Your fingers writing those numbers are a small but real way of saying that you are willing to notice the beginning when it comes. Type 888, then come back to me. What you are really being shown is that the old pattern has been louder than the new permission, and that is about to change. God is not asking you to manufacture a breakthrough from pressure. He is inviting you to recognize what has already started to loosen. There is a difference between forcing a door and noticing that the handle has finally given way. And once you notice that difference, you stop wrestling with the wrong thing and begin to stand in the right place. The deeper conflict has never been only external. It has also been about identity, about whether you believe you are allowed to move when the old version of you still feels safer to the people around you. Fear likes familiar rooms. Control likes predictable outcomes. Approval likes to dress itself up as wisdom and tell you that waiting longer is always safer. But there comes a point when the soul becomes tired of calling self-protection by the name of caution. That point is often where God starts the real work. The root of this struggle may be simpler than you thought. It may be the fear of obeying without being able to manage the result. It may be the habit of over-explaining your peace to people who were never called to carry it. It may be the old belief that you must earn permission before you can step into what was already spoken over you. None of that makes you broken. It only shows where pressure has trained you to live smaller than your spirit is meant to live. Your mind tries to solve everything at once, but your body often tells the truth first. You feel it when your stomach tightens before a hard conversation, when your breathing changes near a decision, when your heart quiets in one direction and resists another. That does not mean every strong feeling is a revelation, and it does not mean every uneasy moment is danger. It means you're learning to listen more carefully, not less. There is a difference between anxiety that multiplies noise and discernment that names what no longer belongs, and that difference can save you from confusing panic with wisdom. Some rooms are simply not built to hold the person you are becoming. Some conversations leave you smaller, not because you are imagining it, but because they are designed around an older version of your obedience. You may leave certain spaces feeling as if something in you has been tugged backward, and you may have blamed yourself for that heaviness. Do not do that anymore. Discernment does not always feel comfortable, and change often exposes which connections were feeding life and which were only feeding familiarity. The opposition has a strategy, and it is not always dramatic. It will try to wear you down with little delays, urgent distractions, and the subtle pressure to keep choosing what is immediate over what is true. It will tell you that clarity can wait, that rest is laziness, that your inner warning is just overthinking, that tomorrow is always better than today. But that strategy collapses when you stop arguing with what you already know. The moment you refuse to negotiate with confusion is the moment the confusion begins to lose its authority. You are closer to the threshold than you think. There is a point in every honest journey when the soul stops asking whether it is allowed to change and starts asking what it is ready to release. That is where you are now. Even if your outer life still looks unfinished, the old agreement with delay is weakening, the old loyalty to fear is being exposed, and the quiet courage emerging in you is beginning to sound more like peace than like pressure. Imagine a sealed envelope on a table, something that has been waiting in plain sight. It was always there, but it could not be read until the right hands opened it. That is how some of your own days have been, held in a kind of stillness that looked like inaction but was actually preservation. The seal was not punishment, it was timing, it was protection. It was God keeping the contents from being handled too soon by the wrong expectations in the wrong season. For a long time, that sealed place may have felt like hiddenness, and hiddenness can be painful when you do not understand it. You may have wondered why so much of your life seemed delayed while other people moved ahead. You may have felt covered, paused, or kept in a quiet place while your desire for motion kept rising. But a sealed thing is not a useless thing. A sealed thing has not been abandoned. It has been reserved. What was protected in the dark is now reaching the moment where light can meet it without destroying it. The pressure around you tried to make that seal feel like rejection. It said you were forgotten, behind, overlooked, or too late. It used the silence to rewrite the meaning of your waiting. Yet the seal was never proof that God was absent. It was proof that not everything holy can be exposed before it is ready. Some things need to remain covered until the environment is able to receive them without breaking them. Now the image begins to move. The edges of that sealed place are not as rigid as they were. What was folded inward is beginning to lift. What was quiet is starting to breathe. You may not see a full opening yet, but you can sense the looseness, the shift, the first sign that the pressure around the promise is giving way. And when you notice that movement, you are meant to recognize that the beginning is already at work, even before the whole picture is visible. If the image I have just walked you through has landed somewhere deep in you, type "Esto desperto" in the comments. Let those words mark the moment where recognition becomes your own. This is not about performing certainty. It is about admitting that the seal is no longer the final word. Type "Esto desperto," then come back to me. Coming back to me matters because recognition is only the first step. The real gift is not just seeing the seal loosen, but learning how to live once you know it is loosening. A new beginning does not ask you to become louder. It asks you to become truer. It asks you to stop treating every pause like abandonment and every opening like danger. And when you do that, the threshold stops looking like a threat and starts looking like mercy. What is being returned to you is not a performance. It is a way of living that was buried under survival for too long. The new start God promised is not asking you to prove yourself by effort. It is asking you to receive what fear could not hand you. That means your next steps may look simpler than your old struggles, but they will be stronger because they are less divided. One practice is to begin the morning by naming the day before. The noise names it for you. Before messages, before tasks, before the first rush of thought, sit for a short moment and speak quietly what you are willing to release and what you are willing to receive. You are not trying to control the day with words. You are aligning the inside of you before the outside begins pulling. That small pause can keep you from entering old patterns before you have even fully woken up. It can become a doorway instead of a drift. Another practice is to check what your body does around certain situations and then respect what it tells you. Notice where you tighten, where you rush, where your peace expands, where it contracts, and let that noticing guide your response. Do not use it to condemn people or become suspicious of everything. Use it to become honest about what restores you and what repeatedly empties you. Sometimes the wisdom of God is not found in more analysis, but in cleaner attention. Protection may appear through limits more than through expansion. A closed door can be mercy. A delayed answer can be mercy. A pause in what you wanted can be mercy. When God protects a beginning, He does not always do it by removing all tension. Sometimes He does it by keeping you from forcing the wrong timing. That kind of protection can feel slow, but it is still kindness. So do not measure your life only by what has not happened yet. Measure it by what has stopped draining you, by what has become clearer, by what you can no longer pretend is peace. Stewardship in this season may simply mean honoring what has been opened and refusing to spend it on old fear. It may mean saying less, proving less, but obeying more deeply. That is not retreat. That is order. If something in this message confirmed what your spirit already knew, let your like be your amen without words. Not as a metric, but as an agreement that what was named here was named correctly. Let the gesture carry the quiet yes that does not need applause to be real. Then return here and keep listening. There is someone in your life who needs this exact message tonight. Someone carrying more than they say. Someone who looks composed but is privately worn down. Someone whose silence has become heavier than their speech. Their face may have come into your mind while you were listening, and that is not an accident you need to overthink. Send this to them, not as promotion, but as delivery, the way a needed letter arrives at the right house at the right time. Before this closes, type EU so escolhido in the comments, not as a wish and not as a performance, but as a confirmation that you are no longer living as if the old delay owns you. Let your fingers write what your spirit is learning to stand inside. Type it slowly, then come back to me. Do you feel how the whole message has been moving you from pressure into recognition and from recognition into permission? That is the shape of a real beginning. It does not always feel dramatic from the inside, because often it sounds like peace before it looks like progress. But peace is not a pause pretending to be something else. Peace is often the first sign that the new path has already started under your feet. You are not being asked to become someone else, to enter what God promised. You are being invited to stop carrying what belonged to the old season. The seal is loosening. The room is changing. The way forward is becoming simpler, not because life has no challenges, but because your heart is no longer agreeing with confusion. That is a real mercy, and it is already working in you. May your Friday be marked by clarity that does not shout but settles. May your mind become less crowded by what was never yours to hold. May your body learn the relief of no longer bracing for every outcome. May your spirit feel the clean edge of a beginning that does not need permission from fear. May you see, even in a small, ordinary moment, that God has already started returning what was meant for your peace. May you walk through this day with a steadiness that surprises you. May the same quiet recognition reach others across different places, different rooms, different distances, because God knows how to visit more than one heart with the same tenderness. And may you understand that this new start does not depend on your ability to force it, because what God promised is being held by His own faithfulness. Zapechachino. You have reached the place where the old ending stops speaking and the new beginning starts breathing. What was said before is still true, but it is no longer the whole truth, because God does not leave a faithful heart inside one sentence forever. He carries it from one threshold to the next, and that is why you are still here, still listening, still being gathered into something cleaner than fear and quieter than panic. The promise that Friday marks a new beginning is not exhausted by a single moment, because what God begins in the Spirit often keeps unfolding long after the first recognition. You are not late to this, and you are not too early for it. The only thing required now is that you remain open long enough to let the next layer arrive. There are moments when a soul understands that it has been standing at the door of its own life without quite crossing it. The hand is near the handle, the mind is active, the heart is tired, and yet the step inward still feels strange because the old room has been familiar for so long. That is often how God's beginnings feel before they become visible. They do not always ask for excitement first, they ask for honesty. They ask you to admit that the place you have been living in mentally, emotionally, and spiritually is no longer enough for the person you are becoming. And once you admit that, you are already moving. What changes now is not only your situation, but your posture toward it. You stop treating every closed thing as a rejection and every delay as proof that nothing is happening. You start to recognize that some pauses are mercy, some silences are preparation, and some frustrations are simply the final resistance of an old pattern that knows it is being replaced. That does not make the waiting painless, but it makes it meaningful. Meaning changes how a burden feels when you carry it. Meaning gives shape to what used to feel random. You may still remember how the last season trained you to brace before you entered a room, to measure a conversation before you answered it, to carry your hope carefully so that disappointment would not crush it again. That kind of living teaches survival, but it also teaches a person to expect less than what was promised. And this is where the new beginning begins to touch you deeply, because God is not only changing what is around you, He is returning you to a way of being that can receive without fear, discern without suspicion, and trust without needing to control the outcome. There is a sacred weight in that kind of return. It is not loud. It does not need to defend itself. It simply arrives where the soul has been overworked and says that you do not have to keep performing for peace. You do not have to keep earning rest. You do not have to keep proving that your sensitivity is justified. You are allowed to stand still long enough to notice that the ground under you is steadier than it was before, and that the first sign of healing is often the disappearance of constant internal noise. Think of the way light enters a room after a curtain has been moved aside. It does not argue with the darkness. It does not chase it with effort. It simply reveals what was there all along and makes it impossible to keep pretending. That is what this next stretch of your life is doing. It is revealing what has been hidden in plain sight. It is showing you where fear had been speaking too loudly. It is also showing you that peace was waiting underneath that noise, patient and unchanged. Some of what has hurt you has not been the event itself, but the interpretation you had to live with afterward. You wondered whether the delay meant lack, whether the silence meant absence, whether the pressure meant failure. Yet many times the opposite is true. Delay can be protection. Silence can be deep work. Pressure can be the final strain before something gives way in the right direction. When you begin to see this, your heart does not become naive, it becomes wiser. And wisdom is one of the first gifts of a genuine new start. This is why Friday matters in a way your calendar alone cannot explain. Not because the day is magic, but because the timing of God often uses ordinary markers to call your attention back to what is real. A new beginning does not always require a new city, a new job, or a dramatic interruption. Sometimes it begins in the same kitchen, the same bed, the same commute, the same chair, the same message thread, but with a different inward agreement. You stop consenting to what drains you. You stop calling confusion by the name of patience. You stop treating exhaustion as evidence that you are failing. There is relief in that, even before anything external changes. Relief enters when you realize that your spirit does not have to keep defending every boundary with anxiety. Relief enters when you understand that what God is building in you does not need to be rushed to be real. The new beginning promised to you is not fragile. It does not depend on your frantic management. It depends on divine faithfulness, and that is stronger than the memory of every unfinished thing that still tries to speak. You have been carrying a lot of invisible conversation inside you. Questions have repeated themselves in the background. Old voices have returned in moments when you were tired. You have wondered whether you were being led or merely reacting, whether your peace was true or temporary, whether the longing in you was a sign or a distraction. Those questions matter, but they are not meant to rule you. They are meant to be answered in the presence of God, not in the pressure of noise. And when you slow down enough to listen honestly, the answer begins to take shape. The answer often begins with a quieter yes than you expected. It may sound like stay, it may sound like trust, it may sound like release that is not dramatic but deliberate. It may sound like stop measuring yourself against the version of you that survived the hardest part, because survival is not the final form of your life. It was a bridge, it was a season, it was a handrail on the stairs. But it was never meant to be the whole house. That is why this conclusion must not feel like an ending that closes everything down. It must feel like a door opening farther. The listener in you needs that. The tired part in you needs that. The hopeful part in you needs that. You are not being pushed toward pressure. You are being invited into permission. And permission from God often feels like a deep breath after too many days of holding your chest tight. You may notice that the same things that used to unsettle you are starting to lose some of their grip. A message that would have sent your mind spiraling now feels less able to define your day. A delay that once made you panic now looks more like an instruction to wait without surrendering peace. A room that used to drain you now feels easier to leave without guilt. These are not small things. They are signs that your inside world is being reordered. Reordering is often how God protects a new beginning. He does not only open doors, he also teaches discernment for which ones to walk through. He gives you enough clarity to stop confusing urgency with purpose. He gives you enough peace to stop chasing what was never meant to hold you. He gives you enough courage to say yes to what is yours and no to what only borrowed your strength. That kind of wisdom is not harsh, it is tender and exact. So if your heart has been wondering whether this Friday truly matters, the answer is yes, but not as a superstition. It matters because God is faithful to meet a ready heart with real movement, even if that movement begins in the unseen. It matters because what has been forming in silence does not remain hidden forever. It matters because the promise of a new beginning is not just about change outside you, it is about freedom inside you, and that freedom is already making room. You do not need to force the next chapter into existence. You need to remain available for it. You need to keep your hands open where they have been clenched. You need to keep your spirit soft where it has been armored. You need to keep returning to the truth that God is not improvising with your life. He is leading it even now, even here, even in the parts that still look unfinished. The beginning is not waiting for your perfection. It is waiting for your willingness. And your willingness can be simple. It can be a quiet prayer before the day starts. It can be a slower answer to what used to receive an instant reaction. It can be the decision not to explain yourself into exhaustion. It can be the choice to rest without guilt and obey without panic. Those small changes are not cosmetic. They are the early shape of freedom. They are how the inner life catches up with the promise, attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you. And strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.